Hello, everyone. I'm Michael Cook, Chief of the Public Information Office at the U.S. Census Bureau. Thank you all for being here this morning in Phoenix, Arizona at our Paper Data Capture Center. We have an exciting day ahead of us. We're looking forward to sharing with you all the work that we've been doing ahead of the 2020 census. We're thrilled to be here on the launch of our peak recruiting and hiring campaign for next year. We're very excited to inform you all a bit on the census operations and specifically Census Jobs, which are very important. Today you'll hear from our Associate Director of Field Operations, Mr. Tim Olson, and the rest of our panelists. We have with us today Debbie Johnson. She's the Director of the Arizona Office of Tourism and the Chair of the Arizona State Complete Count Committee. As well, we have Dana Marie Kennedy. She's our State Director for AARP Arizona. And Brian Manderfield, the National Vice President of Government Relations at the Boys and Girls Club of America. And also we have Monica Villalobos. She's our President and CEO of the Arizona Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. But first, before we kick off the program, we have a short video that we'd like to show you. It highlights and shows why Census Jobs make a difference in every community. This is a small sample of the many ways we're reaching out to people in several languages and encouraging everyone to participate in the 2020 census.
I'm a census taker.
Good pay, flexible hours. Help shape your community's future. Be a census taker. Apply today.
Now, welcome Tim Olson, our Associate Director for Field Operations, for some exciting updates on our operational updates.
Michael, thank you. Good morning, everybody. How are you? All right. Hey, welcome. Welcome to this very important press briefing. And for those of you in the media, I want to thank you for being here in person. And I also, and I'm talking to the cameras right now, I know there are dozens and dozens of media outlets throughout the nation that are listening in and are actively participating through our online approach. So thank you to all of you for your interest in the 2020 census and hopefully some great coverage coming out of today's event. Today, my remarks are going to focus on recruiting efforts for the 2020 census. But before I do that, I want to go back over what has just happened here in the nation, which you may know about, but if not, I want to announce it. A week ago Friday, on October 11th, at 4:23 p.m. Eastern Time, we successfully completed the entire in-field address canvassing field operation on time, ahead of schedule, and under budget. And I want to thank everybody at the Census Bureau for making that happen. You know, this was our first major field operation for 2020. We hired 32,000 people that are in every county of the nation. And over an 8 to 10 week period, those 32,000 people literally walked and drove and investigated 1.1 million census blocks where we had to validate, are the addresses on our list accurate or did they need to be corrected? In that work, it was 50 million addresses that they reviewed in person. And I got to tell you, as our first major field operation, it worked. It was all of our systems that we spent a decade building, they worked. Our training program, it worked. The payroll system, it worked. The actual system that was used to canvass these 50 million addresses, it worked. And I got to tell you, we always think it's going to work, but until it works, you don't feel good, right? I was so relieved last Friday. It worked. And we're so happy because right now what that means is our address file is much more accurate. So in the spring of 2020, when we begin delivering invitations to every household in the nation to respond to the census, to self-respond to the census online, over the phone, or with the paper questionnaire, we know that we're going to get to every household and to put that invitation in front of them. So I'm very, very happy about that. Let me now move to our feature of today, which is our recruiting efforts for 2020. We are embarking upon a pretty big thing starting this week. We have a goal of generating 2.7 million job applicants throughout the nation. And from those 2.7 million applicants, we will be able to select, hire, train, and put into the field approximately 500,000 temporary census employees. Now, I don't know if any other employer in the country is recruiting 2.7 million people, but I have to tell you, it's a big job. It's a huge job, and it's an important job. And I am thrilled today to simply be part of the launch of our nationwide peak recruiting campaign. We're starting with almost 900,000 applicants already in the hopper. Let me say that again. We're starting with almost 900,000 applicants that have already applied for temporary census jobs. So that means we've only got 2 million more to go. Only 2 million more. I want to tell you the pay rate is great. It depends on what county you live in. It runs from $13.50 an hour all the way to $30 an hour. We are recruiting right now. It's so easy to apply, 2020census.gov/jobs. Let me say that again. People apply online at 2020census.gov/jobs. It'll take each person about 30 minutes to complete an application. We are recruiting right now, and we're urging people to get into the applicant pool. So starting in January, when we start selecting supervisors for the peak operations, and then later in February and March when we're hiring actually the census takers, we want to have enough applicants in our pool that we can effectively hire those 500,000 people who will work in every neighborhood, every county, every tract, every location throughout the United States, following up on households that have not self-responded. So it's very important that people consider applying right now. It's not too early, but it's not too late. Let me talk a little bit about the kinds of people we're looking for. We're looking for people that are willing to work part-time, evenings and weekends, 20, 25 hours a week. The jobs, people determine their own schedules. Ideally, they're going to tell us they're willing to work evenings and weekends when most people are probably at home and they're following up with them. We're also looking for people that have bilingual skills, people that can go into neighborhoods or part of neighborhoods that speak not only English, but the languages spoken in those neighborhoods. Right now, out of our 900,000 applicants, about 20% of those people are bilingual. And they collectively speak over 400 languages and dialects. It's a good start, but we've got a ways to go. We need people that speak the languages of the neighborhoods that they're going to work in. So if people are bilingual, please, please, please consider applying for these jobs. So how does anybody in their right mind generate 2.7 million applicants throughout the nation at a time when our unemployment rate is at a historic low? You might ask, are they crazy? Well, they are. I am. But I want to tell you, we're going to do it. We are absolutely going to do it. Starting this week, we are doing paid advertising. We really didn't do much for those 900,000 applicants. We're starting paid advertising now. We're also engaging our partners, people that have joined hands with us to promote the census in their neighborhoods, in their communities, in their states. These people, these organizations, are actively partnering with us to spread the word about these census jobs. So this week alone, and I think they're going to bring up a map, there are nearly 4,000 local events that started yesterday and will go through the weekend. These are local, granular, organic job recruiting events to inform local folks about these jobs. And I have to tell you a story. 3 weeks ago, we came up with this idea. 3 weeks. And the idea was, let's have 2020 local events. 2020, 2020. And we've got, like I said, over 4,000, or about 4,000. That's a reflection of an amazing job by our census staff, and also an amazing commitment by the partners that are part of this recruiting effort. Another interesting fact, normally we generate about 5,000 to 6,000 applicants per day. That's kind of been what we've been generating. 5,000 to 6,000 applicants that go online and apply. It takes about 30 minutes per day. Yesterday, how many do you think applied? Anybody got a guess? Over 17,000 in one day. So are we going to make the 2.7 million applicants as our goal? We're going to do everything we can to let people know about the jobs. You can help us with that. The last thing I want to bring up, and this is really a thank you, is to thank all of the partners who are doing everything they can in their power and their expertise to spread the word about the 2020 census. On the panel with me are some amazing, amazing people from the state, from the nation, that are here representing huge constituent groups. These folks here are going to talk to you about what they're doing and their excitement about the 2020. But what I want to close with is a big thank you to the folks on the stage and for the 80,000 organizations around the country that are currently partnering with us, 80,000. I want to thank them publicly and simply express just an incredible gratitude, because they are helping us, you are helping us get that message out to the American people. Census is really important. Census is incredibly easy. And census is safe. You can respond, and the Census Bureau cannot and will not share your personal confidential information with any law enforcement, with immigration, with any other entity. Once we receive your data, it's locked in a vault. All we put out is tabulated data that is going to influence how we are represented for the next decade, will influence the distribution, allocation of billions and billions of dollars every single year. Things like schools, roads, senior care, health care for little kids, you name it. Census will affect all of us throughout the nation for literally a decade. So I want to thank our partners, the 80,000 organizations that are so active. That number, by the way, keeps growing by about 4,000 a week. We're really excited about that. And so in closing, let me just say thank you. Thank you very, very much. Michael, it's all yours.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, before we get into the panelist discussion about the peak recruiting and hiring campaign and kicking that off, let's hear from our panelists. And let's start with Debbie Johnson.
Good morning. It is so exciting to be here. This is a great day. I'm honored to be here. So as all of you know, Arizona has seen significant growth over the last 10 years, and we're bound for more growth. The 2020 census is our opportunity to ensure that Arizona resources are distributed in a fair way, that we can preserve the outstanding quality of life that we have in Arizona. Governor Ducey has made it a priority to pursue a complete and accurate count in next year's census, which is why he selected a very strong and diverse group of leaders to complete our Arizona Complete Count Committee. We're going to work to educate and motivate Arizonans in the hard-to-count communities to be counted, and we're going to do this in collaboration with our many partners, including, of course, the U.S. Census Bureau. The state of Arizona is proud to be home to one of the nation's processing centers for the 2020 census. This facility will no doubt be a great value to the community and the state. On behalf of the Arizona Complete Count Committee, we're honored to be represented here today. We're excited about the questions to come. We look forward to continuing to collaborate with our partners to make sure that there is a complete and accurate count of all Arizonans in 2020. Thank you.
Marie Kennedy. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting us, and it's great to be here. Good morning. My name is Dana Marie Kennedy, and I'm the State Director for AARP Arizona. From our offices in Washington, D.C., all the way to our team in Hawaii, AARP is proud to stand with the Census Bureau as a national partner. Today officially launches our 2020 Census Outreach Campaign, Define Your Decade. From now through 2020, we will be encouraging people to participate in the 2020 census and share these census job opportunities with our 38 million members. Historically, we know that older workers have filled about half of these positions. Older workers tend to be reliable, dependable, and they know their communities best. They bring with them years of experience and getting the job done. To learn more, visit aarp.org/census. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Now we'll have Brian Manderfield, who's with the Boys and Girls Club of America. Brian?
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. Thank you, Michael, and the U.S. Census Bureau leadership. For nearly 160 years, Boys and Girls Clubs across this country have been a trusted community voice, serving 4.6 million youth, school-age youth, every single year in over 4,600 Boys and Girls Clubs nationwide. And these clubs are located in rural America, urban America, in over 140 Native American lands where we have clubs. We're reaching communities, families, and kids that are sometimes the hardest to connect with and hardest counties or communities to count. We want to ensure that an accurate count and a snapshot of our population, and we are proud to be a partner with the U.S. Census Bureau to make that happen. So why us? Where do Boys and Girls Clubs fall in line with that support? One is, as I mentioned, we're trusted. I think within these communities where clubs can be there as that convener and bringing young people and their families into a place where there are census kiosks and that voice of trust to get them to participate. We can reach members and families in person as well as the social media channels to reach across this country. We can also host and bring together communities to drive solutions to issues they may be facing in participation. And lastly, it's a great opportunity both for civic engagement of our young people, but then also, as we were just hearing about the number of jobs, we also have between our families and the youth, and for some of our older teens and current alumni, there are going to be some great opportunities for them to be engaged in the job training experience and workforce engagement. So thank you very much for having us here, and turn it back to you, Michael.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you. And we'd also like to welcome Monica Villalobos from the Arizona Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for coming.
Gracias y buenos días. Espero que todos están bien. The Arizona Hispanic Chamber of Commerce is proud to partner with the census. We pride ourselves on our own market intelligence, and we use this census information because it is reliable, responsible, and relevant. So we're eager to show that Arizona is census strong. I just started that hashtag, so please use it. We also represent nearly 1,000 small business members and corporate partners. And we know that it's absolutely important to be counted. We know that the census is working hard to shape our future. So we encourage everyone, dale forma a tu futuro. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And now we'd like to open it up for questions. A couple of reminders before we begin with our panel discussion. If you're watching on the webcast and you want to participate, we ask that you submit your question via our Twitter handle, @US Census Bureau. And for those in the room, we have microphones. Raise your hand and please state your name and affiliation before you ask your question. So let's go ahead and begin. Any questions in the room?
Hi, Hansi Wong with NPR News. I have a question for Mr. Olson. I've talked to listeners, readers of NPR. Some people have applied for Census Jobs as early as January when the online application option was available, just months ago. And some people said they haven't heard back from the Census Bureau yet. What is the Census Bureau doing to stay in touch with applicants who apply for jobs that you're not hiring for until next year? And are you concerned that people may eventually drop off by the time you start really hiring for those positions?
And we'll see if I'm being heard. Am I on the mic? No, I'm not.
Yeah, you are.
I am. Okay. Can you hear me? All right. I think I'm working. Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, there's approximately 900,000 applicants from our early efforts. We are now beginning, those that haven't actually been hired, which, the bulk of them have not, we are now starting to communicate with them actively through email and the method of communication they provided in their application to give people an update, and the message I like to give folks that applied early is hang tight. Most of our selections are going to occur January a little bit, February and March of this coming year. So because we're generating so many applicants, a lot of people are going to wonder, I haven't heard anything. So I encourage people just to hang tight because once we start hiring, they will hear from us.
Let me wait for my microphone to come back on. A separate question, Mr. Olson. You said earlier that it's really important for the Census Bureau to hire workers with language skills. And I understand that in the past, the Census Bureau has used legal flexibilities given by Congress to hire workers who do not have U.S. citizenship status, but because they have special language skills or cultural skills that they can do specialized outreach to hard-to-count communities. Is the Bureau still considering using those legal flexibilities given by Congress to hire non-citizens with those special language and cultural skills? And has the Bureau hired any non-citizens so far for the 2020 census?
I'm assuming that's coming to me.
Yes.
As a question. Thank you again for the question. So I'd like to announce today, to inform everybody, I should say, the appropriations law that we work under requires all federal employees to be United States citizens. The appropriations law also provides the ability to hire translators when there is not a citizen available to do that job. So we are, as we have in past censuses that you noted, we will employ that flexibility, that provision, and be able to hire non-citizens that are legally entitled to work in the United States for language purposes if in fact we do not have a citizen available in our pool. So let me give you a little bit of context from the last census. In the last census, we hired well over 700,000 people as census takers. And out of that number, less than 4,000 were non-citizens who were legally entitled to work. So I want to put it in context. It's a very, very small number. So I guess that would be a bit of an announcement. We haven't said this before in front of the press. And so I guess that's an announcement for all of you.
Has the Bureau hired any non-citizens so far for those language skills?
No, we have not had that need, and we have been very successful in hiring from the citizen applicant pool in our pool. But just keep in mind, even though we hired and deployed 32,000 people just in the last couple of months, that's a very small number comparatively to the 500,000 that we will be hiring next spring.
Let's go to our next question, and this comes via Twitter, and I'm going to direct this to Ms. Villalobos. It says, why is it important to get Hispanics in Arizona applying for 2020 Census Jobs?
It's important for everyone to be involved. It's important for us to be counted. We know right now that in Arizona, we are 30% Hispanic, 40% of Phoenix Metro, and more than 50% of K through 12. That allows us to receive not only the voice and the necessary resources to serve our community, but again, it also makes us census strong, realizing that we have not only power in population, but we have purchasing power as well, and we have a voice in our community.
Thank you for that answer. And we have a question in the back. If you could state your name and affiliation.
Octavio Pulido with Telemundo, Arizona. I just know our target or our audience is still concerned. You said that the information is safe, that people should participate, but there's still fear in our community of answering those questions. Is there a strategy behind the census to reach those communities and assure them that whatever answers they're giving at home are not going to be shared with any other federal agencies? Because in Arizona especially, there's fear.
Thank you for that line of questioning. I'm going to direct that to Tim Olson, who will hit hard and talk a little bit about the things that we're doing to ensure that our data is safe, but also it's collected for statistical purposes only.
So I appreciate the question. And this is my fourth decennial census in a management role. So I have to say that the fear that is out there in this census is not new, but I will say it is very heightened. And so the Census Bureau is doing everything we can, resource-wise and messaging-wise, to get the message out to local neighborhood communities that census is safe. For example, we have more than double the number of outreach workers as we have had in the 2010 census. We have materials that are ready earlier and in language that communities can use. I mentioned earlier, already over 80,000 organizations, local organizations, are partnering with us to get that message out. I think in this context of a press briefing today, aside from the jobs, which we're really pushing, getting the message out about the census is really critical. It's important. It affects us for a decade. It's easy online, over the phone with a paper questionnaire. And third, it's safe. Getting that message out to local residents is critical.
Thanks for that. And Debbie, I'm going to ask you if you can weigh in on that question with specifically how states are helping to ensure an accurate count.
Well, I think I can only speak from Arizona's standpoint. What we are going to do is make sure that we communicate in the best way possible to all of those hard count communities, certainly the Latino population because it's so strong in Arizona. All of our materials will be printed in both English and Spanish, which I think is really important to make sure that that message is communicated properly. We'll be having our website in English and Spanish. So we're going to work, we also have a very diverse board, of which of course the Latino population is just one of the hard to count populations that will be included. But it's very important to reach all those people to let them know that it's safe and why it's safe. And I think that's going to be our messaging process. We've got a subcommittee specifically that will be working with that group to make sure that we can best provide information and how we best provide information to make sure that people understand that it is safe and why it's important. Because I think it's not just that it's safe, they need to understand that, but they need to also understand why it's important and why it's important that they respond. So we'll be working on all of that and making sure that we communicate with the Latino population in their language with their folks.
And if we talk about the business community, is there anything that the Chamber is doing towards targeting that information to the community you serve, especially with these small businesses that have a big influence in the Latino population in the metro area of Phoenix?
Yes, absolutely. We're working with the census to make sure that we're getting information out to our membership, not only via social media, but also other outlets that we have, including e-blasts, our events. We have a lot of touch points in the Latino community. And for us, that message of safety is absolutely critical, because right now we're making a choice between safety and being counted and showing our power in the community. That will help ensure our safety. So we are doing a lot to encourage not only Latinos individually, but Latino businesses that have access to an employee base, a strong Latino employee base.
Thank you for that. And our next question we'll take from social media, and I'm going to direct this one to Ms. Kennedy from AARP Arizona. What skills do older workers bring to the table? What could older workers gain from these positions?
Well, they have a lot of skills. They obviously have been in the workforce. They're wise. They listen. They know how to communicate with people. They also know how to, knock on doors. They also know how, a lot of people don't think that they are internet savvy, but they absolutely are. And they just bring years of experience to the table.
Thanks for that. In the room, up front, right here? Or in the back? Okay. Your name and affiliation, please.
Hi, my name is Mai Lei, and I have two questions. The first question is there any safety for the census taker when they knock on people's door, especially after work hour at night or something?
I didn't quite hear the first part of the question. Could you repeat it, please?
For safety, especially like if it's a female census taker have to knock on people's door on a job, is there any safety for them?
I'll direct that to Tim Olson. This is about safety and our enumerators and people that knock on doors.
Obviously, safety is a very important factor. We provide training to everybody who's hired and how to remain safe. I think probably the reason we are successful and people generally are safe in the employment that they will do door knocking is because they're from a particular neighborhood. They're not going in somewhere that they don't know. They will work in the area that they live. So generally people understand in a local neighborhood, because they live there, how to interact with people, when to be out in the community, etc. One of the things that's important, though, is we want our census takers who are part-time employees to actually work when other people that they're contacting are actually home. So normally, my experience is that will occur early evenings to the mid-evening before the sun sets, and also Saturdays and Sundays, daytime. Those are some of the best times to reach out to people.
Question is, in Arizona, a lot of people from our state come here to work for a temporary period of time, especially like in the nail industry. There's a lot of Vietnamese people from other states come to Arizona to work. will they be count as Arizona or as other state? Or there will be a double count if we count here and we also count their permanent address in somewhere else?
So I think that question, Tim, was more about the residence rules and where people are counted. So if you could just touch base a little bit on the residence rules. And
So residency, we have residency criteria that we inform nationwide, not only on the questionnaire that people receive, but also we've got online information. If I boiled that down, it's where it could be said where people live or sleep most of the time is where they should be counted. It's not where they are registered to vote. It's not where their parents live if they're a college person, let's say. It's where they live or sleep most of the time. Now, in the instance where somebody really is moving around all the time, and they can't really define, this is where I live or sleep most of the time, then it's where they are on Census Day, which would be the reference day for 2020, as in prior censuses, will be April 1st of 2020.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. Thank you. And our next question from social media, I'm going to direct this one to the Boys and Girls Club. It says, what are some of the ways that you have already seen clubs engaged in the census? Brian?
All right. So I'd mentioned earlier about the kiosks. Several of our clubs have already positioned themselves to be a place within that community for census kiosks and for information gathering, as well as for computer access for some of our kids and for their families to be able to access the census electronically. We also know that with the convening of the committees that Deborah was speaking about here in Arizona, throughout the country, we have several already with our Boys and Girls Clubs being engaged within the committee structure for the census work within that state and being that voice around the table. And we've already started the process of educating our kids and our families about the importance of why they need to be counted, why their families need to count, and the impact that it has within their communities. And then lastly, the civic element of this too. Being a youth organization, there's an important piece of this for our young people to understand why this is important and how they also translate that to their parents for their engagement, especially in some of the scenarios where the parents may not quite understand why this is important and that it's safe and that we need them to do this. And so that voice can come from their parents as well, to their parents.
Thanks for that. Thanks for that. And we'll take it into the room. Your name and affiliation, please.
Yes, my name is Conchita Raíces Coleman. I'm a local Hispanic community member. I had a Hispanic agency locally in town, and I've just come out of retirement. And I've applied with the census since August. And when they called me, I wasn't available to work that week. So they said, don't worry, we'll give you a call in September. I have yet been called, but I do know that my name is still in the pool. So the question I have is, does the census communicate via cell phone or email? Because if it's cell phone and they don't leave a message, a lot of times I don't pick up my cell phone because I get so many telemarketing calls, and there's no distinction as to if the census is calling me or not. So can you shed some light on that, please?
Thank you. I'll direct that to Tim Olson.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you for applying. We really appreciate that. So when you applied, and anybody else who applied, one of the things you have to do is give us a valid email address. And that's primarily how we're going to communicate until we're doing job offers. And then when we do job offers, we're actually calling people and reaching out and getting somebody to pick up the phone.
A message? Will you leave a message?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And we do
Again, thank you for applying. Appreciate that a lot.
And our next question from online, we are getting questions from evidently people that are actually working for us currently now. It states, is there an opportunity for people who have worked as listers or other part-time jobs to be hired as enumerators next spring? And I'll kick that back to Tim as well.
Absolutely. So, we've had just as recently as a week ago, 32,000 employees, and that were on board and doing a great job. We are hiring, as we said earlier, upwards of 500,000. So if those folks that worked for us during address canvassing are still available and still had a great experience with us and want to come back this spring, we look forward to that.
Thank you. In the room? Yes, there's one in the back. And your name and affiliation, please?
Hi guys, my name is Jenny Anoni from Cronkite News, and my question is pertaining to, I know we touched base on our Latina populations and Latino, but my question is regarding our Native American populations and how we're going to address that. Because I know in our 2010 census, there was a bit of an undercount, or quite a bit of an undercount. So how are we planning to make sure that that is getting addressed in this census in both the urban communities and our rural communities, per se on reservations and things of that sort?
Thank you for that question. Tim?
Thank you. So what's critical in our tribal areas with the American Indian, Alaska Native populations is to, just like everywhere else, get the message out that a census is important, it's really easy, and it's safe. So we have tribal partnership specialists that are on board that are literally working within those communities. We are actually, in many areas, we are doing a slightly different style of enumeration rather than the post office mailing invitations. We are hand delivering to each address and inviting them to self-respond. And if they don't, we'll follow up, of course, during non-response follow-up. I think, though, that, and this applies to all population groups, the most powerful thing that can happen as we lead into the actual census, the actual counting of America, is not only for the Census Bureau to say this is important and easy and safe, but to local community leaders, people that are trusted, much more than the federal government, to say to their constituents, I need you to respond. It's going to affect our future for a decade. It affects how we're represented, and it's safe. Please self-respond. And if not, the Bureau will be knocking on your door, in about 6-8 weeks. I think that's the critical answer to addressing undercounts in any population.
Right. Thank you so much.
I'm going to turn to Debbie on that as well. To address not just the AIN community, but also we're seeing in some of our questions on social media, they're asking about the importance and the critical nature that CCCs play, complete count committees play at the state level, but as a representation of all the complete count committees that are helping us out throughout the nation. Could you speak to that?
Absolutely, and I think from a state perspective, I think that's one of our most important qualities that we have, is that we have 25 people. Most of them represent these hard-to-count communities, and so it's critical that they're then each establishing, so we'll have 16 subcommittees. Each of those committees will be communicating with their own individual communities, whether it's the Latino community, the tribal community, whatever that is, and it's so important that they're able to tell us how we need to communicate, where we communicate, how we can best reach the people in their community. What I'm really impressed with is the number of times. We don't want to reach members of our state, and especially in the hard-to-count communities, once or twice. We want to reach them up to 20 times before April 1st to remind them of why it's important, why it's safe, how they can be engaged, and how easy it is to reply. So with these different subcommittees, so each of our individuals on the committee will form their own subcommittee of people from that population, so from the tribal population, and we're hoping to get people engaged. We've also got the governor's office tribal representative. So again, it's one of our hard-to-count populations that we will be focusing on in the next 6 months.
And one quick question I just thought of for Brian. We talked a little bit about with ARP and how what skills older workers bring to bear. Can you touch on a little bit about with the Boys and Girls Club, with those that might be of younger age, and the benefits that or the skills that they might bring to task?
Sure. I do want to, not that I don't want to answer that question, but I did want to chime in on the complete count committees and that engagement, especially with our native populations and our clubhouses as an example on over 140 native lands, both in Alaska and throughout the lower 48, and that impact of building that trust and that communication and that engagement, and some of that is on the ground there, as well as that involvement with the complete count committees throughout the country. So back to your question also, Mike, on the what do our kids bring to bear? I think part is the enthusiasm and also the elements of the social media engagement and the electronic means. The question that I also had is the 700,000 employees down to 500,000 employees compared to 10 years ago most likely has to do with a larger push towards utilizing electronic means for completing the census. And for a lot of our young people, that means of helping their family and that engagement of getting people used to how to do it and the need to do it online, as I'm sure we'd love to see more online than electronically than the paper processing. Our kids will bring that to bear to be able to support in that process as well, and that messaging and lack of discouraging that timidness to utilize that type of process and system. I also think that our young people will also be able to fill a void for some of those jobs as well. I do admit that many of the senior positions, as we were hearing with AARP's support in those roles, but we also have many of our young people that this role of filling those part-time positions and those hourly flexible positions will also fit a large segment of our older teen population as well as our alumni, and our alumni base throughout this country is very, very large and strong. So I think that we'll also be able to bring that to bear as well.
Great, great. Thanks for that. And let's, do we have another question in the room?
Good morning, Parthenia Weaver. I have applied, and I was given the information that when I spoke with someone, they said that a lot of the retired veterans would be hired or selected first. Is that accurate, or?
The question was about
retired veterans.
Retired veterans.
I was informed that they would be selected first.
Well,
so I can address that. First of all, thank you for your service. We really appreciate that. When people apply, certainly, like in all federal hiring, veterans preference is applied. So when we hire in a local neighborhood area, all of the applicants within that geography, veterans preference will be added, and they will basically rise to the top of the list. So to answer your question, yes.
But anyway, I just wanted to ask that question. And then for AARP, what was the website you gave that we can check for your connection with the census?
aarp.org/census.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
all right. Again, in the room? Name and affiliation, please.
Good morning. My name is Alexis Hermosillo. I'm the mayor for the city of El Mirage. And I know that when engaging community members to participate in any initiatives, timelines are very important. Can you emphasize the timeline of the census, and especially the last day to be counted?
Thanks for that line of questioning. Tim?
Yes. So let me give you the short version. Beginning middle of March, every household in the nation will be invited to self-respond online, over the phone, or with a paper questionnaire. So that's mid-March and during the month of April. They can do that all the way up to the end of July. They can self-respond. We will start following up with what we call non-responding households at the beginning of May. So May, June, and early July. The beauty of 2020, as opposed to prior censuses that were all paper-based in the past, the beauty of 2020 is because we've moved towards a digital platform, if somebody has not responded, their address has not responded, and we are already in the field knocking on doors, if by chance they self-respond while we're in their neighborhood, the next morning their address will disappear from our workload. In the past, that would never happen. We would just knock and knock and knock until we got a response, even if they'd sent a paper form in. So we're pretty excited about that. Does that answer your question?
And the last absolute date to be counted is when?
Could you repeat that again? We couldn't hear
The
you.
last date to be counted?
Our self-response site will turn off July 31 of 2020.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks for that. Let's go back to social media, then into the room. And this is a programmatic question. It says, why can't people work for other surveys at the same time as they're working on the 2020 census? Tim, could you explain?
Okay. Does anybody else want to answer that? No, I'm kidding. I'm going to assume that the person who submitted that is a current Census Bureau field representative who conducts surveys every month of every year, current population survey, American Community Survey, and on and on and on, which we continue doing during the census. So the short answer to that is it's a different payroll system and different pay rates, and it gets pretty complex to mix and employ across two different systems. So people can resign from their current, more permanent job with the Bureau if they want to work on the temporary census, but we usually don't encourage that.
Thanks for that. And we have a question in the room in the back.
Hi, this is Miley again, and earlier I didn't introduce myself properly. I'm with Viet Lifestyle Magazine, TNT AZ Radio, and Asia Media Network from the Vietnamese community here in Arizona. My question earlier regarding to safety for census taker, but the same safety for the resident. How many times do we expect people knock the door from census? And also, the other question is, how do we know who is the official census taker versus somebody fake it and then knock the door and, come to our house?
Thank you for that line of question. I'm going to turn that over to Tim. Tim, and if you could just talk a little bit about how we are identified, what we'll look like, and address the question that you asked specifically about the resident and the safetiness.
Thank you. So every official census taker who's in the neighborhood knocking on doors, they will have a bag that has their materials and it'll have a census logo on it. They'll also have, and I wish I had a display here, a badge that has their photo and the census logo on that, an official badge. They will also have census materials that they hand to the householder when they make contact that explains the purpose of their visit. Very important to us because there can be scams that occur during the census. We've already seen a few of them come up during address canvassing. So we will very publicly and very openly broadcast to local law enforcement and local partners and the American people what to look for when a census taker comes to your home to verify that they are in fact an official census employee. And if there's any question, there will be ways for the resident to make contact through a census official over the phone or online to validate this is in fact a census worker.
Yes, go ahead.
How many times should the resident expect the census taker knock the door? One time throughout census or at least a couple of times?
It's, I wish it would only be one time, but the challenge is finding somebody at home. So we will visit a household. If nobody is there, we will leave what we call a notice of visit, And it will be a simple way for the householder to either go online and complete the form or call the census taker and say, I'm ready. We'll go back several times until we make that completion of that visit.
Thanks for that. Dana?
I just wanted to add too, so no genuine census survey agent can ask for your social security number, bank, credit card, or account numbers, ask when you leave for work or come home, ask for money or donations, ask for support of a political party, and threaten jail time. So at AARP, we do a lot of information regarding scams, and so we're definitely letting people know that these are things that a census agent cannot ask you.
Thanks for that. Monica, one question for you. Could you speak to a little bit before we wrap the things that the Arizona Hispanic Chamber of Commerce has already done to help ensure an accurate count for 2020?
Sure. As I've mentioned, we utilize the census data quite a bit in our own market intelligence. Part of that is also vetting the data, making sure that there's consistency for the market intelligence that we put out. We have an annual publication called Datos, the State of Arizona's Hispanic Market, again, on which much of that is based, at least at a local level, on census information. We then overlay that with other information that's available in the community, in the research community, to be able to make sure that, again, we're providing relevant, responsible, and reliable information. Part of our outreach to the Latino community and to Latino businesses is really to be open to this opportunity because safety has been such an issue and a concern among our community. Sometimes being able to provide that information in the workplace is a safer alternative. You're still talking about where you live and sleep, but in your place of work, that may provide some safety as well. So we're encouraging our partners, our Latino businesses, to have a platform and have a forum available for employees to feel safe to respond, to ensure that accuracy that we're looking for.
Thank you for that, and I really appreciate all of the candid comments and information that our panelists have shared today. Before we wrap up, I'd like to welcome you to stay connected and up to date on the work that we're doing at the U.S. Census Bureau. In anticipation of the 2020 census, I'd invite you to follow us on our social media. There's a couple of platforms where we actually have some footprint on, in Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, all under the U.S. Census Bureau. And then on Twitter and Instagram, it's at U.S. Census Bureau. I encourage you also, media in the house and listening via the webcast, if you want to sign up and get email notifications, you can do that right on census.gov in our newsroom. And then also, you can always contact the Public Information Office at PIO@census.gov. And again, I want to thank you all for being here today. Thank you.